I was in two minds about whether or not I wanted to watch Jules. I'm currently subscribed to Now TV, and I have a list of films on Now TV that I might want to watch, and this is one of them. And honestly, I wasn't going to watch it today, and then I thought, you know what, it sounds interesting. Let's give it a go. I'm so pleased that I did. This is a delightful film. It is so beautiful. It is moving. There is one scene that I detested, but aside from that, it's really brilliant. This was released last year in 2023. It's directed by Marc, written by Gavin Steckler, and it stars Ben Kingsley, Harriet Sansom Harris, Jane Curtin, and Jade Quon. And this is mostly focusing on Milton, an older character who is at a point in his life when maybe his mind is not as sharp as it used to be. And an alien crash lands in his garden. Mostly he's concerned about the fact it's crushed his flowers. And he does tell a few people about this, but because he is older and is maybe not as sharp as he once was, obviously people don't take him seriously. And the alien remains in the garden for a couple of days, and then it comes into the house. I love the design of the alien. It's got a pretty classic alien design, and the alien is actually played by Jade Quon, and the performance is great, the design is great. Really think they did a fantastic job there. And eventually two of Martin's friends, Sandy and Joyce, one by one find out about this alien. Sandy's reaction when she walks into Milton's house and sees Jules, the name of the alien, for the first time is brilliant. It was funny. There is some comedy in this. I wouldn't say it's a laugh-out-loud, side-splitting film. It absolutely isn't. But among some of the heavier emotional scenes, we do have bits of comedy here and there to keep it quite light. And Sandy's reaction was just fantastic. And they do name the alien Jules because obviously it's easier to talk about this character. And I don't want to say too much more about the specifics, but we do see that Jules is trying to communicate something with them. And that part of it was really fascinating. I think it was very unexpected. It's very creative, slightly traumatizing, but I'll get in with that in a moment with a spoiler warning. And I just think it was a brilliant narrative. On the one hand, it is kind of slow. There are huge chunks of time when not a great deal happens, but because the performances are great and the characters are so likable and so interesting that doesn't really bother me too much. And usually I hate slow films. I like narratives with a lot of meat, a lot of substance. And this one certainly has a lot to offer, but actually the more gentle approach works really well for the narrative and for the characters. And I have nothing but praise for it. Almost nothing but praise. As I said, there is one moment that I absolutely hated, but I'll talk about that in a second. I'm so glad that I gave this film a watch. It is so moving and so emotional. And Milton in particular is such a fascinating character. He's at a very interesting point in his life. And there are times when he's very reluctant to admit that, again, maybe his mind is not what it once was, and completely reluctant to accept help. And then there are times where he seems very pensive and contemplating these things and is very much internalizing a lot of that, but we also see him connecting in quite meaningful ways with Jules, and it's just beautiful. It's exquisite. It is so well done. I don't think it will be for absolutely everybody, but I think this could certainly appeal to a wide range of people, and I am so glad. As I said, I was so on the fence about whether I wanted to watch this or not, and I'm so glad that I did. It is an absolute delight. It is emotional, certainly at several points in the film, but there is some comedy in there to keep things light at certain times, and I really thoroughly enjoyed it. So I will now mention the one moment that I really could have done without, and this is the scene, so big spoiler, well, moderate spoiler I guess, but it's the scene with Joyce's cat. Joyce has an older cat who is definitely coming towards the end of its life. And she ends up sacrificing the cat to help Jules. Now, that in itself is obviously a really sweet, selfless thing. But And I guess one could argue that the cat is technically being put out of its misery, because obviously if it was not doing very well, I think they said the cat was deaf, if I remember correctly. It clearly wasn't in its best health. It probably wasn't very comfortable. So one could argue that actually they were putting the cat out of its misery and also helping Jules. So I can see an argument for the scene being necessary and being beneficial in some ways, but I hated it. I absolutely hated it. I am thankful that they didn't make the cat's head explode, which might sound strange out of context, but that is relevant to something that happens in the film. Something quite bizarre, to be honest. But that scene, I could have done without it. It was bad enough having all of the roadkill cats, but to then actually basically watch I didn't like it. I really hated it. I can see the value, but I really didn't want to have to watch that. Thankfully, we moved on quite quickly from that, and that is the only bit that I really hated. But the rest of it was so wonderful, and I really thoroughly enjoyed it. If you've been on the fence about Jules, or maybe you've never heard of Jules, I definitely recommend checking it out. I'm so glad that I did. Really thoroughly enjoyed it. Absolutely think it's worth watching.